Okay, actually, I am not starting. Commissioner Kakani, Vice Chair Kakani is starting. Welcome, everyone.
Good afternoon. It is 12:02, Thursday, March 9th, 2023, and I am calling to order the meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. I am Melinda Kakani, Vice Chair of the Commission. Chair Jackson is not feeling well and is incredibly disappointed to not be joining us here in person for our very first in-person Probation Oversight Commission meeting. So we're excited to have her join us and lead us at the next meeting. And as we start today, I want to welcome our two newest commissioners whose appointments were confirmed last week by the Board of Supervisors. Welcome Commissioner Eduardo Mundo and Commissioner Diane Terry, and congratulations on your new appointments. Would you like to say any quick words of introduction? And perhaps, Diane, we could start with you, or Commissioner Terry?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Just come to this body and to this commission just informed by my experiences, first and foremost, as a family member of individuals who've been incarcerated previously, currently, and so wanting to represent those perspectives, those experiences, and then also as my work as a social worker, working with families who've got entangled with the foster care system and really seeing the needs that families have and the ways that systems can help or hinder families' needs. And then also looking at disproportionality within systems and in treatment in terms of who comes in contact. And last, just with my research, years of research with young men and women who've been incarcerated and, working with programs who are working with community members and just trying to uplift those experiences and community voice to support the commission. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Commissioner Mundo?
Hello, everybody. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the executive team and the justice deputies that took time to interview me and gave me a fair shake, and the board that selected us unanimously. Thank you. I've been in this space for over 35 years. 30 of those years I was privileged enough to work as a deputy probation officer and a supervising deputy probation officer. My work after that concentrated in working with the advocate groups and the PRIT team to come up with a way to serve the youth and the staff that are tied together by circumstance. And I hope to bridge the work and provide insight on both sides, if any of it is of value, and just share the ride with everybody, trying to get LA County to a really good spot where staff want to come to work, feel that they're doing something that's important, and kids are trying to work their way out of the system and hopefully share thoughts about the system that will keep other kids out of the system. And hopefully CBO has a better chance at working with these kids on the front end, and at some point maybe not having the commission that's needed anymore. So thank you, and thank you.
Thank you and welcome. With that, I'll turn it over to Wendy Julian, our Executive Director, to explain how you can participate during this meeting, and then she will call the roll.
Thank you so much, Chair Kakani, today for leading this first meeting, and welcome to everyone. I'm going to apologize in advance if you see me on my phone. We are trying really hard to make this work as a hybrid meeting. I'm very excited to be here in person, but we also want to make sure that folks who can't join us in person can participate. So we're working out all the little issues that come up, and appreciate your feedback at the end of this meeting. Email me, email Janae, send a message, however you can get to us if you have ideas about how to do this better. I welcome that from the people in person in the audience and the folks who are joining remotely. So this is a new era for us. We were launched in February 2021 in the middle of COVID, so our first in-person meetings. And we have a few code of conduct issues that we'd like to describe that relate to our very strong purpose of engaging the public, the stakeholders, people who are impacted by, served by probation. That's the point of this commission, and we really want to make it work as much as possible. So we're going to ask those of you who are making comments in person to do a few things. Please stop speaking when your time ends. I really hate interrupting people. I will, though. So if you stop speaking when you see the time ending, that would be really helpful. Public comment must relate to the subject matter. Are you turning the volume off there? Yeah. Tell me when. I can barely listen to myself once. Listening to myself twice is okay, good. All right, so please keep your subject matter related to the item. If you want to make general public comment, we'll have plenty of time for that at the end. And please remain respectful of the forum. We have actually had no problems with this over the 2 years of the Probation Oversight Commission, and I don't expect to have them now. I think remaining respectful to everyone who's speaking, even when we have disagreeing opinions, is the way to go forward. Finally, if you do decide to engage in disruptive conduct, we may have to have you removed from the meeting. I also really hope that never happens. The way this is going to happen today is the same as in our last meetings, so that the item will be presented. Chair Kakani will present the item, and we'll have a presentation, if any, and then we'll take public comment before the commission makes any decision on the item, so that we can be sure to take the public comment into consideration. If you are here in person and you pre-registered to speak on an item, we have your name on a list, but we still just ask you to go stand up behind the podium in a line, and we will take the in-person commenters first. If you're joining via WebEx or calling in on the phone, you can do what we've always done. Use the raise your hand function, and Janae and Ismail are going to let me know when there are call-in users. We'll be able to hear them over the speakers in this room, and then proceed that way. So we'll go back and forth between the in-room speakers and the call-in speakers. Everyone will have 2 minutes today unless Chair Kakani determines otherwise. And if you wish to make your comment in writing, we welcome that now or anytime. You can send an email to info@poc.lacounty.gov. That's going to be in the chat on the WebEx, but please don't send your public comment on the chat, because especially now, no one is going to see it except Janae. It doesn't comport with the Brown Act, so we really need you to send an email if you want to send the public comment in writing. If we get it by 5 today, we'll attach it to the agenda that'll be on our website. As you heard, we're broadcasting live today. We're recording, and you can watch live on Facebook. You can watch later on Facebook if you want to do a playback. You can also watch on YouTube. There's no engagement with users on any of those platforms, though. All of our social media accounts are LA County POC. Please follow us. Quiero dar la bienvenida a personas que están aquí en público y también en la computadora que quisieran hacer sus comentarios públicos en español. No más tiene que avisarnos que quiere hacer su comentario en español y yo le traduzco, o si ha proveído su propio traductor, avísenos y le daremos 4 minutos para sus comentarios y traducción. Okay, I'm going to call the roll, and thanks everybody for being here early today. I really appreciate it. So, commissioners, Commissioner Canales? Commissioner Carrillo?
Here.
Commissioner Garcia-Lays?
Here.
Commissioner Lewis? Commissioner Meredith?
Here.
Commissioner Mundo?
Here.
Commissioner Terry?
Here.
And Chair Jackson is excused and absent, and Vice Chair Kakani.
Here.
Thank you. We have very much a quorum, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right, we're going to start with our second agenda item, which is the approval of the minutes. So we need to approve the February 23rd and February 28th meeting minutes. Do we have any written public comments or live public comments for item number 2?
We do not.
Can I have a motion to approve the February 23rd and 28th meeting minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Meredith. Do we have anyone willing to second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meredith, seconded by Commissioner Carrillo. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, commissioners, please unmute yourselves and vote with a voice vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Still me, sorry. All right, we are now moving on to item number 3. If you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please let Ismail know now to ensure that you're in queue. For agenda item 3, we will discuss and take appropriate action updates from the Los Angeles County Department of Youth Development. I'm sorry, on youth. Let me take a step back. So item number 3 was scheduled to be a conversation, an introduction with the director of the Department of Youth Development, Mr. David Carroll. Unfortunately, he was unable to make it in person due to a family emergency, and we thought that it was important to have him here in person as opposed to try to engage in a conversation virtually. So we are going to table that agenda item and reschedule it for another day when he can be here in person. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. So now we are moving to item number 4. And again, if you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please let Ismail know to ensure that you're in the queue. Agenda item 4 is to discuss and take appropriate action on contraband in the juvenile facilities and how it contributes to drug use among youth, actions the probation department has taken to address contraband, and the accessibility of NARCAN to prevent harm. Interim Chief Karen Fletcher is here with us today to discuss updates on this topic and how probation is addressing contraband issues.
Things have changed since we wrote the script. Congratulations. Actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to say just a little bit about the inspections before you start. So it's awkward for me to talk about the inspections with Dr. Reynoso in the room, but I'll just pretend she's not back there. So the Probation Oversight Commission is instructed to conduct annual inspections of all of the open facilities, which we did comprehensively thanks to the work of all the commissioners for the calendar year 2022. And in reviewing that report, you'll see that one of the main themes of concerns that comes up is around the prevalence of substance use by the young people in the facilities. And we talked about the issues related to that, including questions like how do the substances get into the facilities, and also what are the underlying causes, the root causes of why young people are using substances within the facilities. So this is actually the second part of that discussion. Well, it's the first part of that discussion. We did the second part of the discussion at the last meeting where we had a conversation about substance use treatment programs that will be referred to again today because it's part of the plan, but the focus of today's conversation is about the first part, about how do the items get into the facility in the first place. I will say, many of you know, there is a board motion that was read into the agenda on Tuesday that relates directly to this issue. This item was on our agenda long before the board motion was read in, but the timeliness is fantastic. So the board will be voting at the next meeting on a motion related to contraband as well. So with that, I'll pass it over to Interim Chief Fletcher.
Thank you very much to speak about this issue. So Adam and I will cover the topics discussed, but just as a basis, we're all very concerned about what we know is coming into the facilities. As many of you are aware, the BSEC, the Board of State and Community Corrections, has a set of regulations under Title 15 that require a whole host of minimum standards for our institutions, one of it which includes searches. So our staff are charged with searching on a regular basis. Because of some of the challenges around staffing levels, it's been a little bit more difficult to make sure that the consistent searches are occurring in the facility. So what we have been doing is increasing the support by deployed staff. Some of our special operations officers have come in to assist with searches. What we do know is that we are looking very closely at the drugs that are found in the facility, As many of you know, and I think it's been certainly in the public media, that there have been 2 overdoses at Barry J. Nydorf of fentanyl. NARCAN was used in both instances, and both of those young men are doing well. We do have NARCAN in our facilities. Our staff are continuing to be trained, but a vast majority of our staff have completed the training. NARCAN is available in each of the units. We have, I believe at this point, as of yesterday, and we'll be reporting out next week to the board, that we have approximately 600 doses at each facility. So that is plenty in the event that we need it for youth and staff as well who may be exposed. We're also looking very closely at how the contraband is getting into the facilities. As you may know, we have security that is hired through a contract with the Sheriff's Department at each entrance to the facility. We're looking at being able to enhance that security there, increase the searches that are happening using the canines that we already have, and also using the canines that could be available to us via a contract through the county as well. So we're looking at all of those ways to address it, but we're also investigating internally and externally how drugs are coming in. We're looking at everything from staff to providers to teachers to visitors, all of it. We're not holding back on the investigation to determine exactly where it's coming from, and we will deal with it appropriately up to criminal charges. We want to make sure that that stops, and we have a very active eye on all of that. Adam's going to go through the plan with you to talk more about next steps forward to make sure that both the youth, the visitors, all of our partners, and our staff are safe in the facility.
Thank you, Chief, and actually covered most of it, I think. Some of the things that we're looking at together, that security contract that we have, those of you who come in the facilities, I think, admittedly, I was at one of the facilities this morning. It's sort of a mixed bag, frankly, depending on how well they're conducting their search for folks coming in, and depending on what you're wearing around your neck or your uniform. Sometimes they're like, oh yeah, but again, we don't want that. It needs to be uniform for everyone across the board. When we talk about some of the enhancements, for example, that we've made to camps, Page Afterbaugh obviously has historically been an issue with the walking trails. We've deployed security guards now there to do regular perimeter searches. There's a huge commitment amongst our management at each facility to, here we go again, make sure that that we are really clear with folks about how often this needs to happen. But as the Chief mentioned, so many of the staffing concerns that are still ongoing prevent us from doing that. So when we talk about planning moving forward, we're looking at alternative fencing, things that can maybe catch what may be thrown over the walls. So we're looking into various contractors to procure some of those items and then install those. We're just having conversations about CCTV and how that's being installed at the 2 juvenile halls now. So Barry J. Nydorf, the cameras are older, so there's a reinstall that's happening, an upgrade to that system. We're asking questions about the perimeter cameras. Do they only face in? What is the capability to face out? Because we have, service roads in the area and things like that we want to make sure that we're monitoring. And in the absence of those cameras, we are sending staff out to go and do on foot on the internal of the wall, sometimes on the exterior. So there's a lot of measures taking place. Vapor tracer machines are detailed in the report. Those are a little less intrusive. If you've seen some of the new technology, those are things that don't even look like a detector. You can walk right by it. It's on wheels. You can move it around. We've deployed wands into the units as well. And then, as the Chief mentioned, some of the ongoing kind of randomized things that we're doing in terms of full-blown searches and having canines come through. What you'll notice in the plan, and something that we will address, there's a little bit of inconsistency. So, for example, at Central Juvenile Hall, we are relying very much on local law enforcement to assist with some of this. Barry J., it seems to be largely placed on our staff. We need to go through the plan again, I think, make sure, especially at the 2 halls, that we're being as consistent as possible. And that's a message that we'll get to our management on site, that we're doing things in a way that ultimately is making the facility as safe as it possibly can be. Chief also mentioned NARCAN. We've talked with our labor partners about that. Really quick conversations about how important this is. We've met with public health as well and some of the other folks who are using it in other county facilities. There's an expansion to that, to our field offices. Some of our folks who've been in the field for some time have had it on their person. We had an issue, I believe about 18 months ago, maybe less, in one of our field visits where our folks were, encountered fentanyl, and it was a pretty big amount and really, really dangerous situation. Thankfully, everybody was okay. But since then, we've really been taking steps to make sure that we have it on hand. It's easy to administer. I don't know if folks have seen it. It is a nasal spray. The way that we're coaching our staff on it, it's effectively just an extension of their current life-saving skills. So all the first aid and CPR that they're already getting, NARCAN is just an exception of that. You can actually do no harm with it. Even if you sort of calculate or diagnose what's happening, if it's administered, there's no harm done to that person, which is good. So again, those conversations with our labor partners were really easy, and they've been supportive as we've rolled this initiative out because everybody understands how unsafe it is potentially. There's more in the plan too about specific services. We partner really closely with Department of Public Health, Substance Abuse Prevention Control. They're in our facilities. They're providing a couple of different types of services there. They do some assessment with our young people to see what some of their substance use history may be, and then they're also providing ongoing support to our young people, as well as some of the things that mental health is doing. A lot of that, yes, it's focused on mental health and things like that, but we know that we have dual diagnosed kids, right? We have kids who are struggling for mental health. They may also be struggling with substance use. So there's a lot of resources for our kids, and a lot of that, most of that, we lean on our partners in the institutions to help us through that.
Wendy, do we have any written or live public comment for item number 4?
We do, yes, thank you. We're going to start with public comment here in the room. If you'd like to give public comment, you can go ahead and stand up, and Jennifer is going to put the timer on the screen. If you're on the phone or on WebEx, if you're on the phone, you need to dial *3 on your phone, and that will activate the raise your hand function. Or if you can just click on the little hand on WebEx, we'll be able to call on you after we finish the in-person comment. Can we try, just go ahead and say 1, 2, 3 and make sure that's working?
1, 2, 3.
Are we good? Okay.
1, 2, 3.
All right. Thank you for being our first live public commenter, and welcome. And you can begin.
Yes, hello. My name is Eduardo Dumbrique. I'm here to make a public comment on the item concerning contraband introduction into our juvenile facilities. I myself am system impacted. I visited Central Juvenile Hall when I was 11, again when I was 13, and again when I was 15. At 15, I was wrongfully convicted of a crime I didn't commit. I was tried as an adult at 16 and sent off to prison for 24 years before being exonerated 2 years ago. So I speak from personal experience, and with regard to staff introduction of contraband, during my stay at both, I stayed at all 3 juvenile halls at that point. It was common for families of youth to bring cash to the children, and then the children would give the cash to the staff, who would then bring tacos, burritos, candy, and whatnot. It was never any incidences of overdoses and fentanyl. That's very troubling to hear that we've reached the point where some of these children are lives being placed in danger by the introduction of these substances. I think it would be useful to educate the children on the risks involved with some of these drugs that they may be experimenting with, as a priority of trying to save and not have any more ODs. So that was my experience. There was not an introduction of drugs, but in 2015 I was in Pelican Bay SHU, and while there was a youngster who was recently tried as an adult and sent to the facility where I was at. He was my neighbor in the security housing unit, and as my neighbor, we spent a long time discussing his experience recently in the Sylmar J. Edgar Buford B.J. Nordiff Juvenile Hall, and it was an issue of staff introduction. Yes. 4 minutes, sorry. Time management.
I'm so sorry your 2 minutes are up, but I do hope that we can chat afterwards because I'd love to hear what it is that you had intended to share, and I'm really sorry.
My apologies for not managing my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you can see the timer and I can't, so you can begin.
Yeah, okay. Hello, my name is Thomas Bell. Forgive me, I'm a little nervous. I don't like public speaking. But as far as contraband in the facilities, it's really no mystery how it's getting over there. I know at my camp, they go down a little trail, throw it over the fence. We've seen it flying through the air. We have to go get it. What first thing the kids do, they see it as well. Now we got 4 or 5 kids chasing us down. And now we got a situation. That's how it's getting over there. It's no secret how it's getting over there, at least at my camp. Visitation, it gets in through an air. When we find these people, we would ask what's being done about it. When we actually see somebody throw it over, what can we do? Run out there with no guns, no pepper spray, no nothing, and tell these people to stop in your vehicle? We can't do anything to them. As far as the searches go, we do our searches. But anybody that's been in these halls or in these facilities know where they hide this stuff. On their body, they know where they hide it. But when we went to Sylmar and they actually did the searches to catch the contraband, it was asked to put them under investigation for it. But yet, that's where they are hiding this stuff. You know, I don't want to get too much detail on where they're hiding it. Anybody that knows these facilities know where they hide it, how they tape it up to themselves. We have to do strip searches in order to actually get to it. We don't do the other search thing that only doctors do. But as far as if you want us to find it, we have to do it. And we can't be in fear that we're going to get put under investigation for doing our job and getting these contraband out of here. There's too many kids walking around the camps with red eyes, going to sleep throughout the whole day for us to do nothing about it. Let us do our jobs, let us get through it, and not have to worry about somebody coming to say, well, he didn't like the way you searched him, so you got to go offline. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stacy Ford. I am the camp's vice president for Local 685. In reference to the drugs, I would like to offer a recommendation. We have vendors that come into our facilities on a regular basis. And a lot of these vendors who come into the facility, they bring snacks, refreshments, and gourmet meals. And that's an issue. We're not allowed to search their food products. However, my recommendation at this time to this commission and to the probation department is that we suspend all outside food coming into the facility by vendors. That includes staff, that includes managers, that includes LACO, mental health, and all the other agencies. My recommendation is that we suspend that until we get this drug situation under control. A lot of food's coming in, and you know, we've had marijuana placed in burritos. We've had vape pens inside burritos. So that's my recommendation to the probation department and to the commission and to the board of supervisors, that we suspend any outside food coming into the department until we can get this drug situation under control. Thank you.
Thank you. Janae, do we have some public commenters? Okay, so Ismail has a mic over there, I think. Are you going to call their names, or how shall we do this? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, call-in user number 12, your number begins with 626. We're gonna go ahead and unmute you now. Go ahead and dial *6 to accept the unmute request, and you can begin with your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. I would encourage the commission to look at the search policy of the probation department. It's pretty apparent listening to some of the callers and having worked in the department myself that there's a lot of avenues for narcotics and illegal contraband to enter the facility. Once it's in the possession of the youth, the search policy is a little prohibited in accomplishing the recovery of the contraband. It's a policy that was drafted many, many years ago, and I think it does need to be revisited because it prohibits the staff from certain kind of searches, strip searches, and so forth. Without articulable facts is how the policy reads. It's very legalistic.
Okay, if you would like to speak again, please go ahead and raise your hand during public comment. It looks like the call dropped. We're going to go ahead and go to Jose Osuna. We're going to unmute you now. Go ahead and accept the unmute request and begin with your comment. Thank you.
I'm not hearing anything back, so I'm just going to go ahead and do my public comment. The lack of accountability on behalf of the probation staff is pretty disappointing. I'm sure that contraband is introduced by family members, contraband is introduced by vendors, but to sit here and act like no probation staff brings in any contraband is truly either naive or just outright disgusting. To just put all the blame on the community, to put the blame on vendors, for me, it's not working toward a viable solution. I've been incarcerated in both adult prisons, county jails, juvenile facilities, and in all of those places, contraband was introduced through visiting. It was thrown over fences, but it was also introduced by staff. So to sit here and act like only vendors and family members and the kids themselves are introducing contraband, for me, really isn't a viable way to approach the problem. For probation officers like Thomas Bell to just put it on family members and vendors, it shows that probation staff really doesn't want to work towards a viable and real solution towards solving this problem. Thank you.
Okay, we have two more public commenters on this item. We're going to go ahead and send the request to Heather Moore. Heather, the request has been sent. You have 2 minutes. Please begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So first off, my name is Heather Moore. I'm speaking on behalf of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. I am formerly incarcerated. I've been in and out since I was 15, so I can see both ends of this, you know, and if there's, yes, there's accountability, there's all these things, but okay, what's the resolution? What about scanners, okay? Physically, we already know that it's going to be a violation of human rights to be doing physical body checking, you know. There's all kinds of scanning now, like scanners to see the insides of a person, you know, and it's less harmful. It's less detrimental to the child's developmental welfare, and it's just the safest route. And I know sometimes there's always going to be contraband, that if it's not being brought in, people will make it. So the kids will make it, So I think if we can invest some of the funding to put some efficient scanners in, this would help. It would help lawsuits being prevented. It would help the kids' mental development and also being disciplined when they do get caught for stuff. You know what I mean? Because there's too many kids dying these days off of heavy narcotics. And NARCAN is a solution, but let's also prevent the drugs from being in the facilities. That's all I have to share.
And our last public commenter on this item is Angela Noboa. You have 2 minutes. Please begin.
Thank you very much for the time allotted to go ahead and discuss this issue regarding narcotics coming into our systems. I've been a probation officer for 35 years. I have totally supported the local 685 at making the recommendation that they have. Next, to Mr. Osuna. I appreciate the fact that you've been through the system various times, but the point here is we're going ahead and attacking everybody, not just probation officers. There's good and bad in every direction, sir. Heather, I support you totally for being honest enough to say we need to approach every angle. Staff, family, visitors, vendors, but we got to start somewhere, right? That's why we got the community board right there to go ahead and listen to all opinions. Not attack, but to listen. So please, when you go ahead and make your recommendation, please address all parties. We have good and bad staff. We have good and bad families. We have good and bad kids inside our system. I've been an officer too long to go ahead and tolerate being set aside and just put on the standing board to go ahead and be executed by somebody's accusations. Very offended by that. But I'm also open-hearted to the fact that I am going ahead and put myself over there to the new interim chief that is suggesting to go ahead and deploy 100 staff immediately into the halls, but we need to have safety issues also addressed for the kids and for the staff. Narcotics goes a long way. Mental and physical handicaps are being permitted inside the halls and inside these camps. We need to protect everybody. As probation officers, we love our jobs. We're good at it. You can go ahead and bring up commendations, but we don't do it for the commendations. We do it for the better of the community. So please listen to us when we come at you with open hearts and open minds to go ahead and be of service to you. We do not want narcotics in our kids' systems. We want to see people that can function in the community without assistance of addictions. We don't want these kind of committees to be set up to have an oversight over our heads. But if it's needed, we're welcome to your advice. But listen to us too. We're all hurting, and we all need help. Thank you.
And Vice Chair Kakani, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have questions or comments?
I have a comment. Actually, I got several comments. First of all, I kind of agree with Mr. Ford's point of view. He's got some valid points of view. Let's suspend these activities to see that minimizes it. However, contraband in the facilities is nothing new. My ex-wife is a deputy sheriff in charge of the Transportation Bureau for sheriffs, and she used to complain to me, this is several years ago, about people being picked up at Sylmar having drugs on them and they're being transported by the sheriff's department. They would find it. So it's not new. However, it has become significant as of late to how it's occurring in the facilities, because I go to facilities and I see the kids under the influence. I ask about it, and one kid says, if you looked in these conditions, no programming, the graffiti on the walls, would you turn to drugs? So that's part of the reason they might be doing it, along with the social reasons they do it. However, we have to do something about it. We have a reserve program with reserve officers who could easily supplement on perimeters, stationing out front to help out. We could utilize that, especially like at Page and Afterball, where you do have the open trails around it. I was at Camp Rocky and I found a football that had been cut open on the outside of the perimeter. And I took it to the office and I said, hey, this is on the outside. Wonder how it got there. Well, in my world, it got thrown back over the fence after the drugs had been introduced by a football into it. There are so many things we need to be doing, but it's nothing new, but we need to look at how we search. I've seen the security people when I go in there. I go in there, they see my blue name tag, go on in, right? They can do that for anybody. The vendors, they don't really give them a hassle. And, Mr. Asuna's right to a degree is that it is a universal problem. It is not just one. We can't blame it just on the kids. We can't blame it on the families. There are staff that have been corrupt. I'm aware of some recent incidents that are under investigation now. And the other thing I want to look at is when we're looking at following up on these drug issues, are we working with other law enforcement agencies who have the expertise and maybe can track back to the original source? But the main thing is it's a universal problem we got to address and look at it and not be defensive of any one part of view, because we are a community. People, workforce come from the community, the people that we're taking care of come from the community, and we have to look at that. And I don't know why we're reinventing the wheel, because over decades, there's been a lot of custody facilities through up and down the state that have faced a contraband problem. They might have some expert ideas on do it, but staff, if we load down the lower line staff, they might have ideas on how to do it. And lastly, I just want to point out again, the state hospital police have offered their drug sniffing dogs to us anytime we want. They're out of Norwalk. Just what I do is ask, because I'm not convinced that the contract vendor we have is doing the best job. That's all I got.
Commissioner Carrillo?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I also want to jump on board with Mr. Ford's statement. I want to maybe expand, maybe this is more for probation or for the commission, about what do we define as contraband? I know, snacks and beverages, obviously on the lower end, and on the high end, it's probably cell phones and narcotics. Maybe probation, before I move any further, that's my take on it, but is there like an official take on what the term contraband means?
It's a wide variety of things, as you just said, right? We don't want duct tape in the facility, right? Because kids are taking the eyeglass sides and wrapping them and making shanks, right? So those types of things. So we're looking at all of that. And as Mr. Meredith said, the security at the front is key, and we are trying to adjust that through work with the Sheriff's Department and the CEO's office to make sure that we have the appropriate level of security at the front. But you're right, it is a wide range of things. It's not just drugs, it's not just phones. We don't have necessarily an identified list of those things. I think it would be helpful to write those things down so that everyone is aware. But kids are often picking things off of the nurses' carts, for example, and then turning those into something different than what they were intended for. So it is a wide range of things.
Thank you, Chief. I need to, Eduardo, congratulate you for your exoneration, and thank you for those comments about your personal life and a fellow prisoner in Pelican Bay who you're sharing this with. I have similar stories as well. And the most recent story happened 3 days ago when I was at Sylmar. And as I was walking in, senior SEO, mentioned that there was some searches and, speaking of tape, there was some fentanyl taped to someone's underarm and cell phones, just sharing with me what was going on. And it was really disturbing. I thought the problem had been sort of subsided at that point. It was maybe controlled. And to my surprise, I walked into the unit, and majority of the boys who were there were either, if I was just going to guess, I don't know, I'm not an expert here, but either heroin or something that really had them in a very relaxed mode. And that was very, very troubling. The conditions of the unit was sort of mimicked how they were sort of conducting themselves, and it sort of seemed like it was just like a laughing stock. Truthfully, they were taking it as just cat and mouse, and maybe staff was also doing the same thing. It's very concerning, I think, for all of us that we're talking about it, and I like the fact that maybe we're talking, or maybe moving in a direction about how to solve these problems, even low-hanging fruit at this point. And if that's the direction we're going, I think any barriers or divisions that we might have as an individual on this commission, I would like to help. I'm not sure what that looks like or what that means, but I think that this is obviously a problem that involves all of us, all the adults in the room, and all the fact that the problem has been identified, and the fact that we're taking a position of, work is being done obviously, but the position that we're just talking about it here, I would maybe like to move this direction in a problem-solving direction. I think Mr. Ford's idea of cutting back on, if that's one of the avenues, then let's move in that direction. Thank you.
Co-Chair, just to your point, so I think it would be a great idea. We're having a lot of internal discussions on what we can do with contracts and all of those things, and our SEO officers and the canines. I had not heard about the state hospital canines, so I'd like to talk to you, Mr. Meredith, about that. But I think it's really important, and maybe it is a committee or all of you from the POC and 685 and 721 for all of us to come together and talk about what we know is happening and some of the ideas that all of us can put together to really make this a robust plan to move forward.
And if I may, just one last statement. You know, there was also talk about a merit ladder, and there was like cup of noodles and chips and other snacks that, you know, I enjoy, we all enjoy it on different levels, but the kids really enjoy. And we have to, you know, if that's going to be something that should definitely not be touched, you know, speaking about, you know, removing items that either are used for, you know, rewarding behavior and so on, you know, I want to make sure this is, I'm not standing in the position of removing that either. I mean, actually making it more robust and maybe, I don't know, maybe whatever they have now, I think the idea is to expand it. Thank you.
Under the facilities.
One second. I believe Commissioner Canales had her hand up for comments. And then we can go to Commissioner Meredith.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, I want to thank Mr. Dombricki for his public comment and his personal experience, and also Jose Osuna. When he called in, he did mention that while in fact it, you know, is a variety of different ways and methods, but until we start dealing honestly with all the ways, you know, we're right back here in this same situation. And I was wondering if the youth are provided like AA and NA meetings, if they're available, they go on site. They do? Oh, okay.
Yes, there is some of those meetings happening.
In all the camps and the halls?
You know what, I know in the halls, we can check to see if they're happening in the camps, but they're at the camps as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then I know it is, you know, a very serious situation with the fentanyl because of so much of the drugs right now, the pills, they're laced with the fentanyl and the overdoses, and we don't want any of the youth, you know, to be harmed or especially lose their life. So it is a very serious situation. And, you know, I know Commissioner Carrillo, you mentioned about the dogs, the canines, you know, being situated outside. And I know that's troubling because, you know, to think that somebody has to go through that, but yet, you know, we can't allow the youth to keep going through this and using these methods of escape. But I also think it's very important that we deal, you know, with the reality of why are they using, because even if we stop the darn pill from getting in today, what's going to happen to them tomorrow? You know, I just want to share an experience that happened to me when I had to turn myself into prison with only 18 months sobriety. I carried on with my sobriety, but I didn't turn my back on my old friends and especially the youngsters. And I'll never forget one day I woke up that morning and I was just crying thinking of three individuals, and I'll just use their nicknames. So, you know, it was Dreamer, Jojo, and Weta. And that morning in the shower I was just crying. And I saw them out on the yard. They were looking for me, and they shared with me. They said, you know, we're not going to lie to you. We're out here looking for pills. And at that moment, my heart broke for them because you could just see in their eyes that they needed something, right? So I didn't lecture them. I didn't judge them. If anything, I told them that just that morning that I was literally crying in the shower because I love them so, so much. So it's that same love, you know, while we deal with all this, you know, we want to stop the burritos because of the drugs and everything. If they're not knowing that they are human, that they matter, that they are loved, and that their life means something, we're going to be dealing with the same problem the week, next week, and the week after, and the week after. So while we bring the dogs and we stop the burritos and everything else, what is being done for them as individuals? Maybe we could start looking at moving all the incarcerated youth out of probation and into youth development programs by 2025, as laid out by the Youth Justice Reimagined, and activate the YES teams as alternatives to incarceration and the DYD plan. Those are just some of my recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Canales. Did you have something you wanted to ask or add, Commissioner Meredith? Oh, sorry. I thought.
No.
Yes, I just wanted to point out I do have a relative that was formerly incarcerated and is addicted. And it's problematic for him even when he got out, but now he's sober, at least for the time being. My point about the facilities committee, the subcommittee of facilities, maybe this is something we could team up with the chief or the department on, and maybe even the unions, to look at trying to identify a reasonable fix from all points of view. Because there has to be something that has to be done, but it has to be a collective effort. It just can't be, this is a policy we're going to do. We have to identify how we can manage it for the use benefit, how we manage it for staff benefits, and how we take whatever action we need to take on whoever's responsible.
Yes, Commissioner Terry.
Hi, I had a question regarding the classes, thinking of the services point of view. Are there any issues with eligibility, enrollment with any of those NA substance abuse classes that are offered at the facilities? Does everyone have access to them when they need them, when they want them? How does that work?
So they are regularly scheduled and our youth have access to them. I mean, clearly the subject of programming overall has been at the forefront, right? We need more. We're working with the CEO's office to add more vendors to a master services agreement to avoid having to go through more lengthy processes so that we can get folks into the facilities, and some of those are going to be about life skills, gang entrenchment, drugs, all of that. So that's going to help support what's already happening with NANA meetings.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
Just related to that, I was also going to ask about, I know there was mention of the programs being culturally responsive, evidence-based, and I know that a lot of times programs that are deemed as evidence-based aren't for many youth of color and other marginalized youth, so just wanting to know more about what those programs are. Are they seen as effective by the youth themselves? Because we can bring in more vendors, but getting to your point about if those services are really effective and getting to the root causes.
So that is certainly something that we are looking into. I would like to have really clear evidence to support some of the programs that we have. It's one of the areas that we've historically just struggled with. So we do know we have DBT, for example, that comes in. A lot of the programs that are provided by mental health are in fact evidence-based. There's a handful of those, but a lot of the way, to be totally honest, a lot of the ways that we've done this is sort of these a la carte services. It's a menu of things that kids can choose from. We're trying to do a much better job of having consistency, having programs that work well together in kind of a grouping. So yes, that is the trajectory, certainly something that we can be much better at for sure. And I just wanted to say, one of the things I didn't mention when we're talking about planning, and I really appreciate Commissioner Carrillo, Commissioner Meredith, this idea of us collaborating to come up with better solutions here. We are implementing a clear bag policy. I didn't mention that. So our staff coming in the door will be required. We're also looking at some procurement options so that we can maybe purchase some bags for staff so they don't have to go out and buy them. Visitors, staff, some of the volunteers who come in, having some bags on hand so folks can swap out if needed and things like that. So that's one other measure we're taking.
I'm so sorry, Commissioner Lewis, that I did not see you over there, but please jump in and then I'll pass it back to you. Commissioner Garcia-Lays and then Commissioner Mundo.
Thank you, Vice Chair. First, I want to commend the interim chief for the decisive action of deploying 100 probation staff from the field to the halls. This should have been done 2 years ago, just honestly. And it's that type of decisive action that had me really upset about the things that have been transpiring. And it saddens me that the union would want to sue because of this. These are young people that will die if we don't act. That's a fact. I want to also add that it's been reported to me that there have been a total of 5 ODs. One kid overdosed twice, went to the hospital, came back and OD'd again. This is from his attorneys. And so when we think about these things, we're thinking about, first of all, let's just look at the brain science real quick. These are young people that are under the age of 26, so what does that mean? Their brains are still developing, and so they do dumb things just like we did when we were under the age of 26. Those are facts. That's science. I didn't invent that. I also want to say that I would fully support both vapor tracers and canines for everyone to walk past. And I know that might be controversial, but think about it. I've traveled internationally, and what do you have to do? You have to walk past dogs. New York, when it's high alert,
There are dogs everywhere and they sniff you. Like, that's just how it is. When you go to the Super Bowl, they're dogs. You got to walk by them. Like, these are events, like wherever you go. The NBA All-Star game, they're dogs. They're well trained, they're harmless, but they're needed. It's useful. This is the society that we live in today. The last thing that I will say is this. When we leave here today, let's stop and think for a minute if this was my son or daughter, and I had heard that they overdosed, or that they were put in jeopardy's way, harm's way, and they weren't protected, how would we feel? When you go to sleep tonight, if you have children, look at your children and imagine that. If you have grandchildren, look at your grandchildren and imagine that. Like, think about it. This is our responsibility. It's not just probation oversight, the community, because we need the community support in order to push some of these policies forward. The unions, we need you. These are our kids. They are ours. And if we don't do right by them and one of these kids ends up dead, I hope every single person that's listened here and every single person that's sitting here attends that funeral, so you can imagine what that young person's life would have been like if we had acted decisively. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. I'll pass it to you, Commissioner Garcia-Leyes.
So the issue of contraband was not on my, was not really on my mind the first year or so on this commission. My attitude really was, I asked around, talked to staff, and what I heard was, contraband sounded like vape pens and marijuana. And my thought about that was, well, that's a public health, mental health issue. I would not want staff to feel like they had to solve that problem, at least not the DPOs or DSOs. And then I did an inspection, and every single person I talked to said that their concern about contraband was that they had been hearing that a young person was trying to get a gun into one of the camps. And staff were telling me they were scared, and I took them at their word. And so part of me said, well, they're all afraid of something that didn't happen, so we need data. And then part of me was also, things seem to be different. And so when we first asked for an inventory of what contraband had been seized, what I was really looking for was weapons. And this recent inventory we got, it was 90% vape, marijuana, USB chargers, which I assume are for the vape pens. But there were a few weapons, and there have been weapons used against staff in the last month. I don't remember the exact date, the last one I heard. And so I think officer safety is a key issue when we think about contraband, and it shouldn't be lost. It is also, the drugs have changed just in the last couple weeks. I've stopped thinking about this as, let's let the counselors talk to the kids about their drug use. And now it's, this is an emergency thing. Which, by the way, the first thing I was going to say, and I forgot to say it, was that the staff who administered the NARCAN are heroes and deserve to be recognized as such. And I don't know if they're going to know that we talked about them at this meeting, but I hope somebody shares with them, and I don't even know who they are, how grateful everybody is for their heroism. But yeah, the drugs have changed. And so my feelings about this whole issue have changed. So before I was like, dogs, that seems pretty intrusive. Strip searches should be off the table. Now I'm not so sure. But I've also always tried to remember my own experiences when I've been arrested and jailed. And the most profound thing I took away from those was from the powerlessness I felt. And that powerlessness is at its most extreme when you're naked, when people are putting hands on you. It's not something that you forget quickly. It's something that changes you. So I've not done a lot of time in prison, but just the few times that I've had those things happen to me, they changed me. And so that is still, in my mind, maybe the most important thing that we think about. How do we deal with this problem without violating people's dignities to that point? So if we're going to talk about strip searches, I think we need to be talking about we should strip search anybody. I would rather see every adult that walks into the camp strip searched going in before we, and that includes me, before we strip search the children. So then a caller said something that really struck me, which is we managed to keep this stuff off airplanes, I think. I mean, there are advanced scanners. We've talked about some technology. I think that we should have the most cutting edge technology that exists in our juvenile halls as quickly as possible. So let's take all the money from the tasers that didn't get bought and immediately invest that in like I said, the most advanced technology, not what hand-me-downs we can get from some state hospital. But and I think the Board of Supervisors would understand that's an investment that's worth it. So I don't know who knows what is the most advanced technology that exists out there that an agency that spends billions, right, can get their hands on. So I want to call for that being at the top of the agenda of whatever future meetings happen. And I think that's what I want to say. So let me close again with I want to thank the staff that administered the NARCAN. I also want to thank all the public speakers. You guys did great. I know it is harder in person than on Zoom to get up and talk. You guys did great. And I'm glad to see actually that this is something that we can all be so collaborative about. So I do have faith that this is something that we're going to see improvement on quickly because everybody's on the same page on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mundo?
I'd like to argue that the best technology is relationship building. Since everybody's drawing on their life experience, I was going to avoid doing that, but 30 years of my life is probation. My time in camp, one thing was understood: casework, casework, casework. The youth who actually behaved the best were the ones who had casework. Kid was acting out. As a supervisor, I looked at the case notes, saw they didn't have casework, did casework, problem solved. That's front end. For 10 years, I've been arguing that we should have probation officers in the halls assisting detention officers. I never argued that they should be deployed or assigned. They should be given the opportunity to come back in to the halls. I would have done that. 5/8s, working with kids, facilitating CBO interaction, building relationships, and maybe inspiring some of the DSOs to understand and teaching them a little bit more about the system. It's impossible not to be institutionalized when you work in an institution. It sucks it into you. And if you don't have people coming in from the outside on a daily basis with the fresh breath of air, sharing what we do, where it all connects, this is what you have. I'm very sad that a deployment had to occur because of such a crisis, and this wasn't done on the front end. And it's not the current administration. We've had a bunch of administrations in the last 10 years. But if we're going to focus on really working on this, it's got to be two-pronged. It's got to be the back-end stuff, but the halls need casework. Currently, we have 64% of the youth in the halls are pending disposition in a system that's not criminal. It's not a criminal proceeding. Detention ranges from 48 days to 2 years. How do you sit in the hall for 2 years while the agencies responsible in the court are wrangling over positionality on a kid's case? We got to take stock of that. If they're going to force us to hold kids for 2 years while they figure it out, then they got to give everybody the tools in the hall to service these youth. 2 years is a long time to be away from home and to be in an institution that's in crisis. I just think that the front end has to be worked on, and this leads to the only question I have. Is DBT offered to staff that work the halls?
So we're working in that direction. It's not complete. One of the goals is to make sure that we have the LA model throughout all of our facilities, right? So we've launched at Dorothy Kirby, in addition to Kilpatrick, but we have a long ways to go, and that is a big portion of the treatment and the continuum of services that we want to provide. We have said for months, right, kids who come in, whether they're there with us for a week, 2 days, 2 years, everyone should benefit while they're there. Everyone should be engaged in some kind of service, and DBT is the perfect opportunity to get that going. So that is absolutely the goal.
I'd actually like to ask a few questions and make a few comments, and I'll pass it back to you, Commissioner Carrillo. So I was actually at Barry J last Thursday with Dr. Reynoso, and when we walked in, the x-ray machine was broken and had been broken, I think, for 4 days. And it was during that 4 days that at least 2 young people overdosed, and perhaps one young person overdosed twice, which is what was shared with us by one of the staff members, that a young person had to be sent to the hospital twice. We walked into one of the units and you could not miss the smell of cannabis. You walk in and it is like rushed into you. Every single young person was high beyond belief. There was no staff. All of the staff were in the control room, and I almost can't blame them because everyone is in a state of crisis. Everyone is dysregulated, from the staff to the young people. Talking to staff who've been there for over 24 hours because their colleagues can't show up, aren't willing to show up, are scared to show up. Talking to young people, and I understand every single POC meeting, there's someone who talks about young people not facing consequences. Being in that hall, being in that facility, that is a consequence. If I had to spend one night there, I would lose my mind. To talk to young people who haven't seen the light of day for 2 months, who haven't been to a classroom more than 2 times in 2 months, to whichever commissioner said it, I don't know how a young person would be expected to not turn to drug use or some sort of, almost like something to soothe the harm that they are experiencing on a daily basis. So this like level of crisis it's through the roof. Again, someone said it earlier, I think it might have been Commissioner Lewis, that we are lucky that no one has died. But it seems like if we're counting on luck, we don't have much left. And I was reading these bullet points that were shared on what was being done in the juvenile halls related to contraband, requesting increased vehicle patrols, requesting local law enforcement to increase mobile surveillance, field searches, request for pricing for golf course type fencing, netting. I mean, this all feels like it misses the mark, to be quite honest. And it also largely feels like it's directed at the community. And I'm not saying that, and again, perhaps it is community, perhaps it is young people, perhaps it is staff, but I'm at a loss to how, we address this issue that, for example, for 4 days, an x-ray machine that was directed at staff and someone like me was not working for 4 days. And during that 4 days, there were 3 overdoses impacting 2 young people. So I guess is there, I don't know, what is the protocol when there is something so fundamental that's not working for higher ups to be notified so that it can be fixed?
So you're right. We are in a crisis. We've been in a crisis for a while now. It's taken decades to get this department into this situation and our juvenile institutions into these situations. The staffing is a huge piece of it, but not clearly the only piece. The metal detector that was down for less than 48 hours. During that time, the security folks at the front desk should have been going through things, which I understand now, and you're shaking your head to agree, that probably didn't happen. So the metal detector itself was working, but the X-ray
I'm sorry, the
scanner
X-ray
was
machine.
not.
Right, it was the X-ray
So
scanner that was not working.
So what they should have been doing is going through bags, but we know, Adam and I have both said it, that we're concerned about the level of security that is provided through that contract. So I met with the Sheriff's Department yesterday to look at alternatives and increase security at the front doors, so that will be increased. It is a universal issue, and we're not going to sit here and tell you that we think it's all coming from the outside, right? We are trying to investigate to the extent that we can where it's coming from. So there are internal investigations going on. I'm meeting with the Office of Inspector General tomorrow afternoon to talk about how we move forward with some of the things that we believe are happening to make sure that, as Commissioner Meredith said, the proper law enforcement agencies are engaged to make sure that we're not compromising anything that may be part of an investigation. We definitely know it is a crisis, and we are trying very frantically at this point to make sure that things are in place. The CEO's office, the board, they're all engaged in this. So many things have been called out, and they are partnering with us very closely to expedite contracts, to get things done, to get things in place, to address all of this. But it is a widespread problem. We can't say it's just programming. We can't say it's visitors. We can't say it's staff. The environment is bad. Lots of repairs have to be done. Kids shouldn't sit in a unit with broken windows. That's being expedited. We're actually meeting again this afternoon, where the CEO's office is now making it a priority to help us push it through, to make sure that those things are replaced. So it's going to take all of us and a global approach to fix what has been broken for a very long time. So I hope that you recognize that we are committed to making a difference. The immediate action is that we're getting more staff into the facilities. We want the staff who have the most recent facility experience from the camps or the halls to come back in and help us, so at least we can stabilize. Staff will begin to feel safer because there are more bodies there to respond to things. Because quite honestly, our staff, if there are a limited number of staff in a unit and some kid is involved in some drug use, they start to very honestly question, can I engage with that youth and take something away? Or is it going to require 3 more staff to come in and help me do that, right? So it's a widespread problem, and we are working really hard to fix it from a lot of different angles. So I look forward to the opportunity to meeting with the unions and the POC to talk about specifically the contraband, but there's so much more to discuss as well.
And you mentioned earlier that there were NA and AA classes being offered. So when I spoke to young folks, they said that the only programming that they had that week was ARC on, I think, the weekend, and that they had, it was some arts programming Monday night, and this was Thursday. So I guess I'm curious in terms of like how it's being offered and how you or your staff ensure that it's actually being offered.
So there's 2 different ways, right? Because we'll schedule things, and then for a variety of reasons, either the provider can't come in, the unit goes on quarantine, the unit is struggling with behavior. So all of those things impact whether or not the program actually happens. I think it's important that we continue to improve our access to calendars so that we can show exactly what is calendar. We do provide calendars of all the programming that happens at both juvenile halls to the board every week. So we'd be happy to make that available to the POC as well.
Yeah, I think that would be great, and I think that was requested actually some time ago, and there has been a delay in that being provided. So I think that would be great. I do have a motion, but I don't know if I should wait for comments or if I can just go ahead and make it based on what was shared. Okay. So I think, and then I'm sorry, I know Commissioner Lewis has more questions, and there was someone over there also who had Commissioner Cadillo. So I'm just going to make this motion and then maybe vote, and then we can continue with the comments. Okay. So the Probation Oversight Commission has brought up significant concerns about observations of drug use among youth inside the juvenile facilities and multiple reports of contraband issues in the 2022 POC inspections report, and has addressed the issue at multiple meetings since. Supervisor Solis and Hahn read in a motion addressing many of these concerns at the board meeting on March 7th to be discussed and voted on at the March 21st meeting. The Probation Oversight Commission expresses support for the motion and for swift action by the department to protect youth inside the facilities by improving security, immediately training probation staff to allow for the distribution of NARCAN, and most importantly, providing an immediate implementation plan for programs centered on reducing the use of substances by youth. And there's a part 2 and a part 3. Part 2 is with respect to probation's plan on contraband. The Probation Oversight Commission moves to instruct POC staff to conduct an assessment of the plan as it relates to also culturally relevant programming, as it relates to access and regularity, and collaborating with the OIG where necessary, and that includes, again, analyzing work probation is doing to review footage of staff potentially permitting drug use and facilitating access to contraband. Additionally, POC will evaluate the plan to determine, among other things, what programming is available, how often it is made available, who is providing it, how many young people attend, why young people choose or choose not to attend, and perhaps also adding to that why it sometimes is not offered. So then kind of understanding whether it's a unit that's on suspension, whether it's a unit that's on quarantine, whether it's a unit that doesn't have enough staff for programming to come in, whether it's simply that youth are not interested. But I think giving a better understanding of when, how, and why, or why not, youth are accessing this programming is really important. And finally, the POC requests a report from the Probation Department for contraband seizures at Barry J. Nydorf and Central Juvenile Hall for March 1st, 2023 through April 15th, and for January 1st, 2019 to February 15th, 2019 for comparative purposes. And, for comparative purposes with the reports already provided for January 1st, 2023 to February 15th, 2023. Subsequently, probation will provide an ongoing monthly report on contraband to the POC and the board as required by the motion. Sorry, that was a lot.
I'd second that.
Is there discussion?
I have.
Yes, Commissioner Meredith.
I appreciate the motion, but it's so long, lengthy, and convoluted, I don't have anything in front of me to read to really understand it.
I can repeat it if that's helpful.
Huh?
I said I can repeat it if that's helpful.
No, I mean, I'd like to know, I know that I've seen the board motion that's pending, which covers a lot, I think, what you're addressing, but there's more to it. I would like to have had a chance to review it before I can vote on it.
Okay. Commissioner Canales? To some degree, yeah. I mean, I think it's expressing support for the motion that was read in on March 7th, and calling for swift action by the department to protect youth inside the facilities by improving security, immediately training probation staff to allow for the distribution of NARCAN, which may already have happened, and most importantly, providing an immediate implementation plan for programming centered on reducing the use of substances by youth. So that was like the biggest piece of the first part. The second piece was connected to essentially analyzing the plan that probation will put forth related to programming. In addition, and so that's again related to when the programming is available, what programming is available, how often it's made available, who, which entity, which department, which community-based organization is providing it, how many young people attend, why young people choose or choose not to attend, and whether they're kind of prohibited from attending because of something beyond their control. And then also calling for the POC to conduct an assessment and collaborate with the OIG where necessary, which includes whether or not probation is reviewing footage of staff when there is drug use, when there is contraband found, and how that relates to whether drug use is being permitted, how it's being handled, how it's being responded to, and then potentially facilitating access to contraband. I did not include a deadline, but I'm happy to accept an amendment related to a deadline. Or if it's an ongoing kind of, like a monthly or report back.
How would you determine why a youth doesn't want to participate in a program or not?
My thought is that the POC, I know that, for example, the POC engaged in kind of in-depth interviews with young people along with the Office of the Inspector General related to the phasing out of OC spray, for example, at Central Juvenile Hall. So something similar to that, where young people are being engaged directly about whether this is working, whether it's not working, and why it's working or not. I think that piece about getting feedback from young people is sometimes missing from many of the board motions. And sorry, and the last piece again was calling for essentially a monthly report back on contraband that's being found in the facilities, and then also a kind of a comparative report from almost 4 years ago, January 1st, 2019 to February 15th, 2019, to just assess what was being found then and what is being found now.
I would ask to amend it as well as to what's happening with that contraband once it's been collected, and along with that, a photograph in the report of what's been gathered. I would hate for things to be repurposed, and not that the photograph would maybe determine that, but an image of the contraband would help.
Sorry, so that was asking for a photograph of what's been, I guess, found, and then also some sort of report related to what's being done with the contraband?
Yes.
I'm happy to include that. I think that it's possible that it'll be determined that OIG has to be the group that looks at the photographs, for example, rather than us. But I think that's actually contemplated by the wording that you provided. So if that, just to let you know, we may not be able to provide that publicly.
Commissioner Terry?
I might have missed this. Did it also include an update on the x-ray machines or the extra staff and who's coming and what's broken has now been fixed? I don't know. I think that should be included, updates on that as well.
Maybe
So that has been fixed. That was fixed within the 48 hours, I'm told. But we're constantly looking at the operation of those to make sure they're in good shape. But clearly, we'd like to move away from that and get some new technology.
So not to give ourselves more work, are you asking about the ongoing planning enhancements to, or the one that was broken and is now fixed? Sorry.
I think just asking about it in general, because it seems to have been brought up across many different comments about either staff the searches not happening consistently or uniformly across facilities, a broken machine. So just wherever that might be happening, it seems like updates on, has it been fixed? Are staff being trained more to do this? Because everyone's kind of touched on this issue.
Perhaps that can be added to, in addition to an immediate implementation plan for programs centered on reducing the use of substances by youth, but also immediate updates related to efforts that probation is engaging in to eliminate access to contraband. Not hearing or seeing, oh, yes, Commissioner Meredith.
No, I'm just going to point out again, it's so complex at this point in time. The best I can do is abstain on it until I have something to review.
Okay.
Is it possible to take a 5-minute recess and get copies of the motion to everybody?
I'm looking at you, Stephen.
I'm not sure about the recess idea, but I think actually because the motion's been made and seconded, it's actually on the floor. So I think probably the best course right now would be to have a summary of the motion and its directives given the friendly amendments read, take a up or down, yes or no vote on that, and then if folks pass it, then it is what it is. If folks don't, then if someone wants to reintroduce it or agendize it for a future meeting, you can either do that here at the meeting or in advance of the next agenda.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So I think I can summarize it, yes, and I do have a copy of it in front of me, and my apologies for it not being provided. You know, the way the Brown Act works, if you provide something to all of the commissioners, it also has to be provided to the public, which is the way it should be, and we in time, Commissioner Kakani has been kind enough to be working with some other commissioners within the scope of the Brown Act to develop these. So this is actually something that I have as a goal to do better for the commission, is to be able to provide these motions in writing in advance, and it just requires things happening with more advance notice. So I apologize for my part in that. What Stephen said is that maybe I could just read the specific directives. So the directive of number 1 is regarding, it's really 2 things. One is supporting the motion. That was the read-in motion. That motion is available as a link to the agenda, on the agenda, I think, right, Janae? We can add it because we have a copy of it now. So, and that to immediately implement the things that are required by that motion related to the improvements of safety, immediate solutions to these issues, and the training around distribution of NARCAN. So that's the first part. The second part is instructing us to do an assessment of the plan. That's the plan that you do have before you. So the plan that was provided by probation, and to look at that plan and do investigations that are necessary to ensure that the plan is ensuring that the plan makes sense around having the programming available, how it's made available, who's providing it. And I actually have something to add to that in my report later on today as it relates to that. So, and doing that on a monthly basis until you tell us not to. And then the third part is much more straightforward. So you have in your packets a report from January 1st through February 15th of the contraband. That's attached to the agenda, available to the public. So what this is asking for is another one that's also 6 weeks from right now, March 1st through April 15th. And then also a report for the same date period of 2019, before COVID, to see if there's a comparison. So, and that's actually not something that I've talked to the probation department about the possibility of doing that, but the idea is just a comparative report. That's the third piece. So now I think we do the up or down vote. Right, Stephen? Okay.
Vice Chair, I have a question. To Commissioner Lewis's point, if I heard you correctly, Sam, this idea of collecting this information from the youth, and I felt like that last part was added, but maybe I missed it from the first read. So either we get information about if they were being offered programs across the board, not just AANA, so just programming. If they had a chance, if it was offered, and then if they had a chance to attend, and if they didn't, why? And was there a fourth part concerning, I just want to make sure that we don't miss anything there, because
I wrote how many attended, why they chose to attend or not to attend, why it was sometimes not offered, and then why students were prohibited from attending. Is that right?
General inventory of what's available. I mean, I had contemplated that as related to substance use, but I know that this is a larger issue related to all programming, given that young people are saying that they don't have access to regular programming, that it's awfully sporadic, no rec, all the things. So, again, in evaluating the plan related to contraband and the use of substances by young people, what programming is available, How often is it made available? And if it's not made available, why? Based on, if there's a schedule for it to be provided, why that schedule has not been complied with. Who is providing it? How many young people attend? Why young people choose or choose not to attend?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
If the new version needs to be seconded, I second it anew.
All right, so we're going to vote yes, no, or abstain, and start with Commissioner Canales.
Yes.
Commissioner Carrillo?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia-Leyes?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith?
I think I have it, so yes.
Commissioner Mundo?
Yes.
Commissioner Terry?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Kakani?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes 8-0.
I know that there were other comments, so I want to give Commissioner Lewis the opportunity to make those, and then I believe Commissioner Garcia-Leyes and potentially Commissioner Carrillo, if I recall correctly.
This is a two-part comment concerning the X-ray machine and snacks. If we have a properly operated and manned X-ray machine, and snacks are going through it, just as we do in Pelican Bay and Calapat, maximum security prisons, there shouldn't be a problem with bringing snacks in. It's X-ray. You can see it. If there's contraband in it, it's confiscating the person that's bringing it in should be handcuffed and prosecuted. As long as we have a properly operating X-ray machine and it's properly manned. If at some point the X-ray machine is not operating, then nothing goes in. I think that would be a better balance. I also want to strike a balance when we talk about the facility. We mentioned the breaking up the X-ray machine, but also broken windows. One of the things I think, and I know this is separate, but it has to be addressed. The windows that are in Barry J are not proper. You shouldn't be able to break those windows so easily, and they're broken on a regular basis. The security doors to the security room where staff is at should not be able to be kicked open by some teenagers. That's a security risk. Because if you break through that side and you decide to go to the back where you may have kids that are in protective custody, they're at risk. Or if you break to the other side, you kick open the doors to the same thing. Those are all risks. And so those things need to be addressed because Barry J was not built to be a long-term facility. And if we're going to talk about safety, we have to talk about the structure of the facility. Because the safety of staff and youth are at stake if these areas are not done properly. I've been in prisons all over this country and in other countries, and I've spent time in prison. There's no way you can kick open a prison door or kick open a glass door like the glass, like you can throw chairs against it. Like it's not. It's built so that you can't do those things. And so I think that's something that should be a high priority. There's millions of dollars that we're talking about investing in changing the facility. That part has to be addressed. Because if you think about it in these terms, if youth that were attempting to get to another youth, and so you have, I just hypothetically say, Y is empty right now, Y is being refurbished. So you have Y1, Y2, and Y3. Y3 is what's called a wet section. It's like maybe 3 rooms. And so oftentimes kids that can't be with the rest of the kids are in the wet room or the section 3. If you can kick open a door to get through there and then kick open the door to get to the kids that are in Y3, what true protection are we providing them? The same way if something happens, like you have to be able to make sure that staff can control the units in that sense. Like that's just, it's just, if we're looking at this in the short term for being one of the facilities, I know this is not what we're talking about, but it has to be addressed because it is an issue. And the last thing I want to say is Monday, I see one of the DYD staff here. In terms of programming, Monday we do hope that full-time credible messengers will be deployed in most, if not all, of the SYTF units. I know there was a meeting today. They did a meet and greet at Campus Kilpatrick on Tuesday and yesterday at Barry J. And so those staff will be there alongside, shoulder to shoulder with probation staff to support, not to take jobs, to support probation staff, to support our youth, not to take jobs, just so we're clear, so everybody's listening. The credible messengers are not coming in to take jobs. They're coming in to enhance and support all of the services that we provide the youth. Thank you.
Comments on the right?
now that we've passed this motion, I would like to share with the chief, this inventory we have is great. I mean, it's really helpful. It's like seeing the number of OC sprays and the number of youth that are incarcerated. It gives me data that I can use to better understand all the anecdotal information I'm constantly getting. However, there are two suggestions I have. One is the descriptions of like a metal object are not particularly helpful. I'm assuming that it might have been a weapon, I don't know. Description of like a box cutter, that brought it home to me. Metal object, I wasn't sure. The other thing is, all this references to vape pens, vape cartridges, etc. There's a lot, I mean, that's 90% I think of what's being found. I'm assuming it's not nicotine, but I don't know what's in those cartridges. And doing some testing on this would be, well, I think it's necessary to understand what's actually happening. I mean, everybody's description so far of what the kids look like when they come and talk to them, like that doesn't even sound like THC, right? I mean, that sounds like fentanyl. So I would like to know, if possible, exactly what drugs are being smoked in these vape pens.
You're good? Okay. Commissioner Mundo?
In the future, would a breakdown like that be available for the camps?
I think we can manage that. Yeah.
Okay, and just one more question, just to prove that I read the whole document. There's an asterisk under 2022 in the camps information, and I can't find what it's attached to.
It's probably a typo and something that was removed, but we forgot to remove the asterisk, but we'll look into it.
Okay, I'm going to move us on to item number 5. Not seeing any additional comments. Item number 5 is discuss and take appropriate action on the Executive Director's investigation and report back into the Probation Department's involvement in auctioning service weapons.
Thank you. So the Board of Supervisors passed a motion directing the Probation Oversight Commission to do an investigation into the auction of service weapons. There are also a number of other directives in that motion, but that was the one that specifically was requested of us. And at the last meeting, the commissioners voted to delegate that work to staff. And so I'm happy to say that I've completed the report and that I have provided the draft of it to you for your approval today. I also have shared that report with County Council and the other partners who are working on this, which includes the CEO's office and ISD. Does it stand for Internal Services Division? Is that right? Thank you. I'm going to just give you some of the highlights of the report, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. I want to say, to begin with, that while I shared the concerns that the board offices and the board presented about this gun sale, I think the result of the investigation has made me feel less concerned, not more concerned, than I did at the beginning. And that's for a number of reasons. One is that because of the support from both the Probation Department, the Sheriff's Department, and other folks that I've talked to, I've learned some details that are described in that report that I think help to explain how this happened in the first place. I'd particularly like to say thank you to Deputy Director Howard Wong for his helping me understand things about guns that I did not know. I think one of the most important things to say is that this idea came about under Interim Chief Ray Leyva, and that's important because of Interim Chief Ray Leyva's background, which is in the sheriff. And this is a very common practice in sheriff's departments and law enforcement police departments around the country, is that when the department I'm not going to use the right word, but needs to replace their service weapons, they need to get new guns, they often allow the active law enforcement or the retiring law enforcement to purchase the old service weapons. And they do that because Apparently people like to have their service weapons and keep them. Don could probably tell us more about this, but also because it makes the department some money that they can use to buy the new service weapons. That's actually probably the most common reason. And so when Interim Chief Leyva came in and learned that there was this surplus, that was exactly the plan, was to sell the weapons to the people who already had them. But it turns out probation can't do that. It's prohibited by law. So probation would have to go through an external vendor in order to do that. At first they thought about maybe going through the sheriffs, but that didn't work. And that's just not permitted. So it was actually ISD who recommended the vendor that the gun auction website that was discovered, and with the intent of selling those service weapons back. The other reason that I feel less concerned now is that because these weapons are what is called off-roster weapons, and if you want to know things that you probably don't, read the report, that means they can't be sold to me. They can only be sold to someone who's active law enforcement. So even though I could go on and look at it on govdeals.com, I couldn't buy it unless I showed up and showed my active law enforcement status in order to do the license transfer. When you read the report, I think you'll see that. I will say I think it's a concerning in terms of what was described in the board meeting about the judgment call around doing this, although also the timing of the mass shooting in Monterey Park, which is so terribly tragic, and the fact that these went up on auction, I think it was the day before or something like that, was really tragic. So the end result is that these guns are being destroyed. The Sheriff's Department is will help with the process of clearing the serial numbers and then removing the serial numbers. I've learned a lot about the vendor, SA Recycling, who will be doing now, we were told this morning that it's called shredding the weapons. I was expecting melting, but that tells you what I know. We're in the process now of ISD entering into a master service agreement, which will help for the destruction of weapons, not just from the probation department, but from all county agencies where employees are armed. And this process, I think, has really cleared up a lot of things for the county, and the report will be submitted. It's being submitted to you today, and then be submitted to the CEO's office for inclusion with the final report back to the board. Let me just make sure I will also say much of the information that was provided came from the chief, from Chief Gonzalez's remarks at this meeting. He gave remarks at 3 different meetings about the issue, but also from some written correspondence and individual meetings that I had with probation leadership and the sheriffs. So that's the end of my report, and I'll say that I feel confident going forward that this issue has been resolved as was requested by the board. Yes.
Do I do that or public comment first?
We do public comment first.
Okay. So do we have any written or public comment to item number 5?
No written public comment, and if anyone would like to give public comment, you're welcome to step up to the podium. I'm looking at you, Janae and Ismail, to see if anyone's raised their hands on WebEx. Looks like no. All right.
Okay. And commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? Commissioner Mundo?
Yes, it's unfortunate that the context came so late, because I got a lot of calls when that article published, and I have a lot of friends, but it's unfortunate that the context came after, and it makes us aware that as a commission, we have to hold back and let things play out so we get all the information, and be reminded of that with this lesson, because I'm sitting here thinking, wow, what a different story. Or the truth finally came out, and so thank you for the report.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, with that, I think, would someone like? Okay.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Meredith to accept the report as written by Executive Director Wendy Julian as related to the gun auction as requested by the Board of Supervisors, seconded by Commissioner Lewis. And I think at this time we'll take a vote.
Yeah. Thank you. Commissioner Canales? Commissioner Carrillo?
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia-Lays?
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith?
Aye.
Commissioner Mundo?
Aye.
Commissioner Terry?
Aye.
And Vice Chair Kakani?
Aye.
Thank you. That passes 8-0.
Be moving on to agenda item number 6, and that is for us to discuss and take possible action on the Executive Director's report on attending the California Board of State and Community Corrections, also known as the BSCC, April 13th, 2023, board meeting and the Probation Oversight Commission's progress towards completing the strategic goals outlined in the 2022 Strategic Operating Plan and plans for 2023. This month's report will include updates on outstanding information requests, strategic planning, and the launching of the POC's data dashboard.
Thank you. So it was a good suggestion by a couple of commissioners for me to add this to occasional agenda items to let you know some of the things that staff are working on behind the scenes. And I added the piece about the BSCC just to let you know that we are tracking the information that's happening on a public basis, and that includes logging into those meetings and attending the meetings and reporting back to you on what we learn, although much of that is available to everyone, of course, and I certainly expect the meeting on April 13th to be an interesting one in which we learn about the results of the corrective action plan and the items that were marked as still under corrective action plan on this piece. Mostly I just want to let you know that we're paying attention and wanting to ensure that the board has the information we have. Although I will say that over the past couple of weeks, the communication has improved significantly, in my opinion, with the board on these issues. And I think that I hope to see that continue, and I don't see any reason why it won't. With respect to the outstanding information request, this actually relates directly to what Commissioner Carrillo was talking about. We have 2 outstanding information requests that are they're concerning to me, and actually I think you heard Chief Fletcher say that one of them is concerning to her as well. So one of them is the programs and services calendars and inventory for the facilities. This is an issue that partially was made as a request by the POC because, quite frankly, we're concerned that they didn't exist, and wanted to make sure that the calendars that show which providers would be coming in to provide services at each of the facilities was correct and updated. And because in conducting our inspections, it's really important to be able to audit and make sure that what's being said on those calendars occurs. The other thing that actually staff have brought up regularly in our meetings, it relates to the program inventory and getting contact information for these programs and holding to high levels of standards what's happening with the programs, like are they good? And that's specifically written into the task of the Probation Oversight Commission. That was Dr. Reynoso's job, whose position we hopefully will be filling soon, is to assess the quality of those programs. Something Commissioner Terry mentioned, for example, about the cultural competency of substance abuse programs, but also how many kids go? How many kids are not available to go? Those types of questions. What do the contractors say about their accessibility to the facilities? And also, what do staff say about these various contractors? Because, for example, I've been told when we were doing inspections that there are a few CBOs that are, I think, flaky is the word that was used, that don't show up regularly at the time that they're scheduled. I want to know that as much as I want to know about the efficiencies and the struggles that the CBOs have in actually trying to provide high quality services. So without the calendars and the inventory, we really can't do that. And I'm just going to say again, this has been requested. There's been a letter sent by the Office of the Inspector General, and we need to receive those calendars. The other item is the monthly intake log. This is a more complicated issue because the log that we've requested does in fact contain confidential information. In fact, that was part of the request. was that we receive a redacted version of the log. That log has very helpful information around who is coming into the juvenile halls related to their demographics, like their gender and their race and ethnicity, but also the charge, the law enforcement agency that's bringing them in, and we're interested in using it to really get a sense of who the young people are in the facilities. But just yesterday, actually, we were working with Jessica Gama around finding a way to pare down the request so that it doesn't include any of that confidential data and is, in fact, information that could be pulled out of an existing system. So I'm feeling like there is progress on that one that's moving forward. And then the data dashboard, I almost hesitated, Sarah, to put this on my report at all because we're so excited about it, and it's like almost ready for launch, although I feel like I've been saying that for a long time. So as you know, Sarah and Jennifer work very hard on crunching numbers, including our interns, every month on population and on OC spray reports, which is two of the items that have been what people ask us about the most. But we are hoping to be able to very soon have something that's a lot more user-friendly than just spreadsheets that we attach to our agenda, and that somewhere you could click and you could go and you could see what was the population at Camp Afflerbaugh last month and what was it a year ago, and be able to get that data available. So I hesitate to put a time on it because we're working with some of our internal bureaucratic delays, but it's almost ready to go, and I'm very excited about it. And then strategic planning, so your leadership team, Chair Jackson and Vice Chair Kakani and Secretary Garcia-Lays are working on reassessing the strategic plan in particular as it deals with our subcommittees, our ad hoc subcommittees. So I think that given some of the things we've learned, we could direct our efforts more strategically. You heard some of those ideas today, like, for example, a group working on contraband, the way that we have a group that's working on the sexual misconduct hearings, maybe having a group that's specifically focused on policies and directives instead of the huge buckets that we had our subcommittees under before. So I hope at the next meeting we'll have our report back for you on that. And that's the extent of what I need to report today. Oh, actually, this is more of an announcement. But you will notice that OC spray is not on the agenda today, even though that's been what we have been working on the most over the last few months because of the board motion. We are having a special virtual town hall on Monday at 2 p.m. So we won't get to see your faces, but you're welcome to come. And really the point is to get public comment on our recent report, the OIG's recent report, the data that Sarah has done such a good job of analyzing, and talk about the next steps after the successful elimination of OC spray in the 5 targeted units at Central. So please join us on Monday for that report.
And with that, do we have any written or live public comment for agenda item number 6?
Nope. Anybody want to make public comment? Okay.
And then, commissioners, do you have any questions or comments? Commissioner Mundo?
So the program information used to be shared with the old probation commission, and I'm not sure why that wasn't carried over. And then the intake log, that's actually done on an Excel sheet, and the columns that need to be, well, it was when I was there, so the columns that need to be redacted can just be taken out, so it doesn't even need a black marker. And I know every line that's on it because I've seen one recently, and so it's easy. It's easy to redact that, and it's really, really an important document. Especially getting to know which agencies are heavy-handed with their deliveries to us and which aren't. And there's also another intake document that's actually more important, and that's the one that IDC tracks the agencies that are actually compliant and do not bring kids in. And so that's a good one for everybody to have.
Actually, Chief Fletcher, maybe you can weigh in on this. So you're right. Commissioner Mundo, the calendars exist. I mean, if every time I've gone to a facility, someone has been able to hand me a calendar when I walk in that day about what's available. And sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes they're just a copy of the month before, or sometimes they're right, but the organization doesn't show up or has changed their schedule around. What is missing is a consistent calendar that would allow a commissioner or Chief Fletcher to walk into the facility and know what's supposed to be happening that day. And I think we're close, and some facilities do it very well, and others don't do it as well. So it is a broad issue, but you're right that there is absolutely a calendar, a BMP calendar or other calendars. Is that a fair way to express that?
Yes, that's correct. And then in light of all of the staffing challenges in the juvenile halls, we've created a calendar that we report weekly to the Board of Supervisors for closed session, and it has every unit by day of what program is offered. It has the population of the unit, and it has the number of participants to the extent that our staff have captured it. So we're refining it to make sure that we can capture all of that information, but that is currently just for Barry J and Central, and then the other calendars exist for our camps. But we're also working on an app that our staff can have, and I think at some point then we can broaden that so that you can click on the app and the facility and know exactly what programming are taking place.
There's just a question. Is there a reason that that document that's provided to the board can't be provided to the Probation Oversight Commission?
Yeah, happy to provide that. And it's just come about in probably the last, it's been since incentives, really, because we've been talking about, how the incentives were applied, and then in addition to that, it was a subsequent request for programming. So I can provide that piece of it.
Janae is telling me that there is a red Toyota Camry blocking the valet, and if it's yours, someone is mad.
So I guess the question is, so there is obviously the monthly calendar, and then is the inventory something separate?
The inventory is exactly what it sounds like. It's a list of, so for example, we should be able to look at pull up the Atherba monthly calendar, and it will say NA is provided on this day. And the inventory will say NA is provided by XYZ Substance Abuse Prevention Council. Here's the contact information so that we could contact them. So they are similar, but complementary, I guess I should say.
And is there an issue with getting the inventory? It sounds like now there's a calendar of sorts that's been provided to the board. Is there also an inventory that exists, or does that need to be created?
I think it might be both. I think it does exist to some extent, but maybe not as complete as we would want, so we'll work on that.
And Wendy, can you clarify? I feel like this has been an outstanding request. It was part of an MOU. Do you know how long that request has been outstanding?
Actually, the request predates the MOU. I'm looking at Sarah to make sure I'm saying things correctly. So it is also on the MOU, but the commission made the request. I believe it's over a year ago at this point.
I don't know. Does there need to be a motion?
I don't think so. Okay. In particular because the Inspector General was involved already, so I just felt like it was something I needed to say since we're still waiting for that information. And we're coming up on our inspection season again, which is when it becomes the most important.
I guess, I don't know, it feels like more often than not we hear about requests being made and that they remain outstanding for one reason or another. I know that, with board motions and things like that, there has been more responsiveness, but I mean, given how much we're hearing about young people, again, not accessing fresh air, not accessing school, not accessing programming, not accessing, even we've heard from mental health providers who say sometimes it's difficult to access the young people that they're supposed to be working with. This feels urgent, and I would hate for this to not happen, and then we lose kind of even more time in trying to move forward on understanding again what young people are receiving, whether they're receiving it, whether it's what they want, whether it's quality, whether providers are being flaky, whatever it is. So just I I don't know what it takes to like move this across the finish line.
So it is something that we've been piecing together over the last several weeks, especially where we've been uploading calendars as they become available to us. So those things have been available. There's sort of a shared, I don't know what we call it, but
it's a Teams
it's
folder.
a Teams folder. So we're
you're right.
We're uploading those things on a consistent basis. There has to be the interaction between the two parties. Sometimes it's exactly what was being requested. Other times it's not. We have to go back then to operations to gather all that information. That's part of it. So I would say there's certainly the urgency on our part. There's a meeting happening right now, in fact, between some of our operations folks and our contracts folks to start to inventory what exists, what doesn't exist, to fill the gaps, right? So scopes of work need to be drafted. We have a master services agreement. We're putting all of that in place. So all of this is happening like literally as we speak, so it should be no issue in sharing all of that. And I think your motion covered it. So if you want to put a deadline in that motion, then that'll force us to get, just in terms of the date and the actual request, I think it's already been.
I think it's also covered in the MOU. And Adam is right, and Chief Patino is right. So we have, for example, the DSB calendars for February, but no RTSB calendars. And then for March, we don't have any calendars yet, as of like 2 days ago. So we are getting them, but we're not getting them in advance, which is what we need in order to do the inspections. So I want to just address what you said, that it has not been my experience that we don't get anything we ask for. In fact, most things we ask for, we get quickly and completely, or a really detailed explanation from Jessica about why it's not there or when it's coming. It is a few items that have seemed to be particularly difficult, and that's the reason I'm bringing them up. So for example, we made this contraband motion. You all made the motion. The information was provided completely and within the time that was agreed upon. So it hasn't been an issue of regular responses to our requests. It's been an issue on particular responses, which may be because it's being pieced together. That may be the answer.
But for a year? Okay. Commissioner Garcia-Lez?
I was going to bring up another issue in matters not posted, but it does connect to this, so I'll bring it up now, which is that I've recently been in communication with some folks at the LA Times, said that they had been making public records requests and had been getting the information, but requests for updated information had been turned down, and I believe the reason they were told was because the information was not kept in the format requested, something like that, which immediately raised red flags for me, because in my day job, suing agencies who use that particular excuse is actually one of the ways we fund my salary, because it's easy wins. So I just, there's no action that needs to be taken. I just wanted to bring it up and ask the chiefs to look into that and make sure that we don't have any problems with getting information to the LA Times.
Certainly will. This is the first we're hearing about that, so certainly we'll look into that. That is not, definitely not, as I'm aware, that's not been our practice. We tend to be very cooperative with those requests when legal to do so, but we'll look into it for sure.
Thanks.
Commissioner Meredith?
Piggyback onto that, I've been dodging the NBC national news for the last 3 or 4 weeks, referring them to the PAO that we apparently don't have at probation headquarters. And when they talked to me, they said they can't find anybody to talk to them. So we really need to look at this PAO issue to resolve a lot of problems.
So a couple of updates. We've made an offer for a communications manager, which is going through our unfortunate bureaucracy, not just probation, but CEO and others who have to weigh in on that. So that's on its way. Now, related to that specifically, and I think Chief Fletcher kind of touched on this, and it may have been this morning actually when we were meeting with our managers. So there's been I think generally when, how do I say this exactly? We get media requests for comment all the time. Depending on the administration, there's a certain response or reaction to that. So for the better part of the last 2 years, we've been sort of not making regular comment in the media. As folks are aware, I mean, that's all public record at this point, because you'll see no comment from probation and things like that. That's one of the things that we're seeking to improve upon, frankly, and build some relationships with media folks, because That one in particular, we have been responsive in providing, responses to the questions that they're asking. But when it comes to, officially going on the record and things like that, like I said, we hope to make some improvements. We're bringing a communications person on who can assist us with some of the messaging specific to that.
Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Okay, with that, I'll move us to agenda item 7. This is for commissioners and POC staff. Oh, yes.
I just want to say, for those of you that are listening online and for those of you who are here present, I want to reiterate my request that you give us feedback about how this went today. But I really hesitate to say this when Belinda has left the room. You know what? I'm going to wait until she comes back.
All right, so item number 7 is matters not posted on the agenda to be discussed and, if requested, placed on the agenda for action at a future meeting of the authority of matters requiring immediate action because of an emergency situation or where the need to take action arose subsequent to the posting of the agenda. So just creating space if there are any comments or requests for future agenda items.
Okay, well, I'm going to say it then before you go back on, and it's going to be recorded, so she'll hear it. I want to say a really extraordinary thank you to the staff of the Probation Oversight Commission, led by Ismael. This has been a Herculean effort to create a hybrid meeting with such a small staff that will feel inclusive and like we can participate with each other, and hopefully that those of you who are listening online can hear. So Ismael and Janae and Belinda, who we can clap when she comes back in, they are superstars, and then Jennifer and Sarah are carrying this program work on the side. We are a very small and mighty team, and I just could not be happier for them. And then I just want to say a very special thank you to Marco, who doesn't even work for the Probation Oversight Commission, but is here today. I'm just going to take my lead from Commissioner Canales, which is to say that the reason that they're doing this, and I can say it because I know, is that they love the people that we are working for. And by that, I mean the young people that are in the facilities, the adults that are on probation, their families, the stakeholders, the advocates, the staff, the people who are from other county agencies who are participating. We want to be a model for public engagement, and I could not do this without them. So I just want to please join me in thanking this team for what they've done to put this together, and please tell us what we can do better, because we really want to. And there she is. She's back. Yay! You have to watch the video back, Belinda, so that you can know what we're clapping about. But thank you very much, and thanks everybody for being here today.
Okay, I'm going to quickly move us to agenda item number 8, which is an opportunity for the public to address the POC on items not on the agenda. And Wendy, if you could please facilitate public comment for us.
Yep, go ahead if you're here in person and just come up to the podium, and we'd be happy to listen to your public comment. And in the meantime, I'm going to look at Janae and see if we've got folks who are raising your hand. Okay, great. So we do have some online public commenters as well. So if you are joining us via WebEx, dial *3 on your phone to raise your hand. And then when we call on you, you're going to dial *6 to unmute yourself. Or you can just use the little raise your hand function. And we will start with Mr. Bell.
Okay, thank you. I'll make it real quick. First, with the DPOs being deployed, we have a list of DPOs who are willing, that are promotional. DPOs who are willing to be promoted and go to these halls willingly. Versus you taking 100 DPOs who are just getting started in their field position away from their caseloads and throwing them back in the halls. You can either have 100 people get promoted and go in there willingly, knowing what they're getting into, or take 100 out of the field, not wanting to go back in there, go in there unwholeheartedly. I'll take the wholeheartedly people in them heartbeat. You're going to get people if you offer that promotion, if you offer that, versus taking them away from their field positions and their caseloads, and they're just learning how to do it, and throwing them back into the halls where they're hearing about all the assaults. They're hearing about people getting walked out. There's a lot of people getting walked out that it ain't even discussed yet. And we hear this, they see this, and you guys want to throw them back in. It's going to open up a whole lot of IA packages. Just letting you know. Another thing, I think last meeting, I just wanted to say, commissioners, especially you guys, if you guys repeat something that we say, make sure it's something that we actually said. I think Mr. Carrillo called me out on one thing, and I thought I was tripping. I went back and listened to it, but I didn't actually say that. I didn't actually call the kids trash. But that could affect me later on. If I get put under investigation, that investigator is going to say, well, the commissioner had to correct you on that before. Or somebody could be listening and see me walking with my family. Oh, that's the probation officer who think I'm trash. And it could lead to something else. You know, the callers are, you know, they're okay. But from coming from you guys, it comes with a little more authority. So I would just appreciate if you guys just make sure we actually say what we said.
Mr. Ford?
Good afternoon. Again, I'm Stacy Ford, the CAMPS Vice President for Local 685. Just want to make two quick comments. As I look at the commissioners, the table, there needs to be representation of Local 685 and Local 721 on this commission. I'm just throwing that out there. We can give you some expertise on some of the statements that you make and some of the comments that you make. We're the experts. We're the ones that do the job day in and day night. And I believe we are the ones that can give you some insight because we're actually doing the job. The second thing I want to piggyback on what Mr. Bell commented on, there is a list of DPOs waiting to promote. When we talk about morale in the department, it's below zero. There is none. People are upset. People are stressed out. There's been no movement in terms of line staff in a while. I'm not talking about going into a director's position. I'm talking about DPO 1s and DPO 2s and whatnot. So I think we should look at activating the DPO 1 promotional list and promote those folks into the halls as DPO 2s. DPO 2s in the field, they've earned their stripes. They paid their dues, and I don't believe bringing them back into the halls at this state in the game would be a benefit to the department. So please consider that. The union is open for conversation with the department on that, and I encourage you to take advantage of that as soon as possible before you make any moves that will probably not benefit us in any way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, hello, Edward Enrique. I spoke earlier. I heard a lot of discussion of the x-rays and the scanners that are being used and the ones that were ineffective. I can tell you from my own personal experience that they're the ones that were deployed in the California Department of Corrections, that they're ineffective. And I think there's questions regarding radiation, privacy, but I can tell you that I think we can get up to an ounce through them without it being detected. From my own personal experience. So if we're spending a lot of money on those machines, I would take that into account. I mean, I'm sure that science and testing, can prove or disprove what I'm saying, but I'm speaking from personal experience. Another thing is with regard to AA programs that are provided or given, the kids are getting options. I think that if they're controlling cases are drug related, then it should be required by the court, who has that power. And also that they should be able to volunteer. That way that they're actually getting that information, whether they want it or not. They probably need it. I also wanted to comment on, with respect to the well-being of the child that's in these institutions and their families. I understand that we're all working very hard to try to provide the best environment for them. But education is really important to them. I understand that a lot of juveniles have been transferred to the other juvenile halls, and the interruption in their education, the interruption to their family connections, being able to receive visits, all of that has an overall impact in their choices when they get released from these facilities. So I just wanted to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak, and it really is nice to see that there's collaboration from all sides to work on these important issues. Thank you.
Hello. Make sure that is correct. I just wanted to comment on the substance abuse issues that we're having in the halls and say that I think we definitely need more resources within the community, but we have DMH in our facilities, and we have a lot of licensed clinicians in our facilities that we can use to provide groups and do the individual counseling for the substance abuse issues that we're having. I think one of the main issues that are that's happening is you can't force the youth to participate in the groups. We can encourage, we can incentivize, we can do all those great things, but we can't force them. So hopefully, once we get control of the searching and get the contraband out, we can kind of help them dry out because they're not using it anymore, because it's not available, and then we can start to do the work. Thank you.
We're going to move on to public
Thank you.
comment on WebEx. Is that fine?
Yes, please.
Okay, so call-in user 39. We're going to send you a request to unmute. Please begin.
Okay, thank you for recognition. This is Mel. Just have two things. One, I will say that I was listening to, I believe it was Commissioner Mundo, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I believe he eloquently stated earlier about the statistics of 64% of the youth who are pending disposition and remaining in the halls. And if it is you, Mr. Mundo, I'm glad that you're here, because maybe you can assist. I have been begging the commission to invite the courts to these conversations, because probation does not hold the youth in the facilities. The courts are the ones that determine when and if a minor is moved and when they're moved. So hopefully, if it is you, hopefully that will facilitate and open that conversation so we can invite the courts to these conversations. Secondly, I've been taking a class, motivational interviewing. And in that class, it forced me to contemplate empathy, the term of empathy. Last meeting, I noticed that, I know you all are, understandably, you have your positions, but there was a DPO, Ms. Marlene Carr Smith, and she told you about her sister who was killed in the line of helping the same community that we all are supposed to be helping. But not one of you even made any mention about it. You just kind of dismissed it, and I just thought it was a little bit, I thought it was irresponsible to just dismiss it. And then the last thing, I will agree with Mr. Bell. I believe an apology is owed to him, because the comment that was made was very irresponsible. It was not a direct quote, and if we're supposed to work together, this is an oversight commission. That means please take everything in consideration. DPOs, linemen, line staff, everybody, kids, everybody into consideration. That's all I ask. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Next up, we have James Maddox.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, my name is James Maddox. I'm a social worker, policy analyst, and advocate. Having attended many Probation Oversight Commission meetings in the last 16 months, I believe that the POC should be commended for their forthright and clear direction. Former Chair Carrillo, current Chair Jackson, and Commissioner Canales have personal experiences that informed but did not shade their perceptions. I commend former Chair Carrillo for creating an atmosphere where his experiences informed the overall discussion, but never, in my view, shaded it. The POC, including the executive director, in my opinion, is the template for what citizens of Los Angeles County should expect from an oversight commission. We should demand that the POC template be used to create an oversight commission for the Department of Children and Family Services. The attitude that the POC faced was clearly demonstrated by former Chief Buffalo Gonzalez. In the face of more than 15 articles in the Los Angeles Times outlining structural failures, he refused to resign. Supposedly, on Monday, February 27th, 2023, Gonzalez had a meeting with high-level staff and said he would not resign and that the Board of Supervisors would have to fire him. That attitude, in the face of overwhelming evidence of management malfeasance, is an illustration of why the actions of Supervising Probation Officer Oscar Cross, who assaulted a 17-year-old child, went unpunished. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have calling user number 6. We've sent you an unmute request.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I am a DPO2 deployed staff, and, you know, I haven't sat in a lot of these meetings, but just hearing some of the conversation is great that we can collaborate together, but I agree with Mr. Ford in that it feels like the conversation is solely discussed about the benefit of the youth or how staff are not supporting the youth, but not officer safety or the fact that, you know, there's no conversation with people that are actually doing the job. And so, you know, I've been in the department for almost 15 years, and when I first started, we had a lot of different tools that were effective to keep the facility safe and keep structure for the youth. I mean, just as you would treat your kids at home, you have structure, you have consequences. And it seems like everything that we use to keep us safe, keep the other minors safe, and also keep structure have been pulled away from us. And of course, there's always people that overuse things, and there's always staff that may be doing something incorrect, but that doesn't represent everyone. That doesn't represent all of us. And so it's hard to do the job and do it well when we have no tools. If we get back some of the tools, it helps for staff to feel safe and want to actually come to work. We come in and get deployed, and it creates a liability for us and potential loss of our job. So we're afraid of that because we have families. And so just to pull us in and affect our schedules without any care to help us support our own families, it makes us feel like we're unheard and unsupported. And so, yes, we are getting paid to do a job, and most of us come into this job to do it well and to support communities and the kids that we service, but we also need tools. We can't just have everything stripped away from us and a kid, you know, assaults a staff. And
Thank you for your comment. Next up, we have Heather Moore. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead and begin.
Hi. Okay. So, first off, I'd like to just remind everyone, we're having these meetings because things they've spiraled out of control. Okay. And I as a formerly incarcerated young woman, I want to suggest that it would be great to put in credible messengers because the youth would be able to identify with the struggles of the developmental process of the youth's mindset. If they would be able to work with someone that they can identify with, maybe we would be able to diffuse a lot of situations when it comes to dealing with staff. And then also, it would encourage them to take substance abuse classes and to understand why they're feeling the way they feel in this stage of their life. I think it would be a great program to put in wherever they would be. I don't know if they would go to safety youth treatment facilities or if it's just all going to remain in juvenile hall, but credible messengers I think would be a great program to offer to the youth because it would also benefit the staff and the youth so they can fully process what they're going through. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Danita.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioner.
commissioners, and everyone in the staff. Um, Listening to this conversation today, and I've listened to numerous meetings within the last year and a half now, I'm concerned that the probation officers can't do their jobs because when they were discussing like the contraband and the drug issues, they're the ones that get investigated. You know, I feel like these officers are having their hands tied behind their back. You can't expect them to do a job when the consequences are far greater against the staff that work there than against the youth who are committing these, um, you know, I'm going to say crime, but they're bringing in contraband and participating in poor behavior. We have to have some type of, you know, obviously the rewards program is not working. We need to think out of the box and think what will help these kids. And unfortunately, you know, NAAA is not forced upon them, but it's just unfortunate that these officers are being turned into the bad guys, so to speak, for doing their job because they care. And I think if you continue that, you're going to continue to see decline in staffing and people who care, who want to make a change in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two more comments. The next one is calling user number 2.
Hello. I wanted to mention the shifting of staff, the 100 you're moving to the halls. You should consider, the Board of Supervisors should consider lifting the hiring freeze that would make you more, have more staff. And also, I think the POC should add and investigate staff injuries in the institutions. How can you bring in more programs and more services and it's not safe? You don't have enough staff in these locations. And this is my second meeting. I was on last week and this week, and I just wanted to bring my observations to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last comment, Angela Noboa.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity again. My 35 years of experience, I want to try to get it all in within just 2 minutes. So here we go. When I was back as a DSO in the halls, we had structure, we had family support, and I'm not talking blood. I'm talking co-workers that enjoyed coming in and facilitating these minors. Let me give you a quick example of what it was like in the AM shift. At 6 a.m., the kids would wake up, and then they would go ahead and have their breakfast. We would go ahead and let them know they're going to go ahead and go to court. The ones that don't go to court, get ready for school. Then we get ready for school movement. Once they go to school, while they're in school, the staff behind, they do searches. Make sure that they have their 5 books, the papers, no pencils, no contrabands, no metal, no box cutters, no broken CDs, no knives. At that point, we go ahead and pick them up for lunch, feed them, make sure everything's going well with the teachers. We talk to the teachers, get them ready, send them back to school, pick them up by 3, do a physical search, a round search where they go ahead and take their shoes off, their socks off, clap them together. Any pencils, any contrabands may fall out. We do not strict search them. After that, we go ahead and get ready for dinner. Once they have dinner, we get ready for first rec, where they go ahead and step outside and see the sunshine and feel the air on their face. It can be baseball, it could be weights, it could be anything at this point, basketball. Even the staff would go ahead and play with the kids and enjoy a good game. After that, they come back, they take their showers, we get ready for second rec, which would be letter writing or anything else, maybe phone calls for their parents that they miss so much and want to obey and listen to and see again one day. After that, we go ahead and do the vendors. NA, people like that would step in, have their time. Those that would want to go would go, those that don't. After that, we would go ahead and have snacks and get ready for bed. That was a full day, and that was structured, and that worked because you had family staff working together, holding hands and doing kumbaya and making sure the kids are okay and we're okay. After that, I want to go ahead and please concur with Ford. We need to go ahead and bring in those people, not force the 100, but bring the 100 that want to come in. Try that. And after that, talk to the Board of Supervisors. Hopefully they'll want to go ahead and work with us too. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. That concludes public comments.
Thank you all for your comments. As a quick reminder, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel at LA County POC. To receive reminders about our upcoming meetings, visit our website at poc.lacounty.gov to subscribe to our email list. It is now 2:31, and I adjourn this meeting. Thank you.